This is now the fourth time I'm making this recording. I keep discovering that I have more stuff I need to move to the SD card. Hey. So hopefully this time it will A, work, and B, be even better than the previous 3 attempts. I should have had plenty of practice by now. So, on the subject of, I'm just about done with Hubbard. Just kidding! Or rather, I've done further thought about it, and I've changed my mind. I mean, by that I've found an explanation for why Hubbard's, why Hubbard didn't give a biological explanation for the ability of the analytical mind to access the reactive mind and erase engrams therein. Didn't come up with a biological explanation in Dianetics. I found an explanation that seems to be to make sense. There's kind of it's separated into, I'd say, a prelude and a the explanation that makes sense to me proper. The prelude is the only reason why, or a big reason why I had a problem with that in the first place, is an admiration of evolutionary psychology / sociobiology / behavioral ecology, a respect for those, especially I believe it was evolutionary psychology where I ran across this, that is in fact Hubbardian. Hey, don't you think it's time we start having a term Hubbardian? Hey, hopefully by the time I get through with you, you will. If not, now. I had a respect, a Hubbard-based respect for the evolutionary psychologist or psychologists who proposed the notion that there might be a subconscious mind, but that you can neither access nor change it. Because of, especially in evolutionary evolution of a science, and also in Dianetics, the modern science of mental health, couldn't speak to the original thesis retitled "The Dynamics of Life." I had a respect for the fact that anyone came up with such a notion. And that's based on Hubbard. Hubbard makes a big deal out of the ability to pose problems, which, when that becomes sublimated, is the ability to come up with a hypothesis, the ability to go past a cultural bias and ask questions, to question assumptions. So that's the prelude. That's why that forms a large part of why I was having a problem with it. But that in itself is a bias. But I reconsidered, because, I like to sort of give a notion a second chance. And I just started thinking about what would be the explanation that would seem most natural to me. And boy, once I came up with it, I was like, damn Skippy, does that seem to have a lot of weight? And I was like, yeah, it does. And this is the explanation I came up with. It's just decades of research into what we would now call deep hypnosis, but in 1950 we would have called just simply hypnosis. Like, everything's hypnosis these days, man. Maybe we all been hypnotized. It's a quote from a quite politically correct these days show called Amos and Andy. Maybe we all been hypnotized. Infamous these days because it involved white men doing blackface, but so understandably. No, I haven't watched a lot of Amos and Andy. The only thing I know is, there was one episode because my dad, I don't even think my dad was a huge fan of Amos and Andy, but I think he liked one particular episode where guy, I believe his name was Catfish, said, maybe we all been hypnotized. And I think it was also the exact same episode that had girl goes by the name of Ruby Begonia. I think that may have been the exact same episode. And we had a miniature schnauzer named Ruby Begonia. We just called her Ruby, but the full name was Ruby Begonia. Ruby Begonia. Okay, well, whatever. Let's see. Decades of research into hypnosis, which, shows that we now definitely no longer think that a person has more accurate memory under hypnosis. I personally really wonder about that research. Wonder about the biases and how strong are those biases of the people, say, taking it back on that. Wonder very strongly about that. But even if it turned out to be totally legit and the researchers saying that that's no longer valid, or was never valid, had no particularly strong biases, there's no saying for sure that that's not a recent development. Maybe for a long, long time, there definitely was more accurate memory, but by the time they finally got around to testing, that was. But by now, that answer's just not true. Ding 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 ding. So, at any rate, be that as it may, now there is nonetheless a subjective, much stronger sense in deep hypnosis that of going back, which may just be the more intense relationship with one's own self and memories and subjectivity that comes about in deep hypnosis, be that as it may. Decades of research into hypnosis would have certainly in 1950 strongly suggested that that there was a subconscious and it could be accessed and changed. Etc. And hypnosis is, Hubbard goes has some major insights into hypnosis, goes into exactly how important hypnosis was in the research of Dianetics, and like Freud, stopped doing hypnosis right as he was getting his own therapy underway. Although, unlike Freud, Hubbard did not stop hypnosis. If he indeed did, I know the debate on that subject. I just choose not to address it at this point. The huge debate. What was I going to say? What was I going with this? Major insights into hypnosis. I forget. But at any rate, yeah, seems like a pretty simple explanation to me. Decades of research into hypnosis would explain, I think, fairly convincingly why Hubbard would think that you can access and change the subconscious mind. More specifically, Hubbard reclassifies it into analytical and reactive mind. Damn good move. And both politically and I would say from a philosophical scientific standpoint. And change would be, erase engrams. I've got to say that explanation feels really right to me, feels really convincing to me. It was like, try on for size the explanation that seems the most natural, and then, wow, how good does that feel? And it feels real good, which is by no means to say that I'm necessarily any more objective than I was before. I may even be less objective, but nonetheless, I find it convincing. Hubbard goes about real logically. So then that leaves the question. I'd like to mention, I think it might come up later, that Hubbard always claimed that he was an accomplished practitioner of Indian hypnosis, which he claims goes back thousands of years. I should look into Wikipedia's article on hypnosis to find out if they even mention such a notion, or whether I've got to take Hubbard's word for it. It'd be nice if it at least mentions such a notion. Now, what the heck was I going to say next? Yeah, it felt much more natural. So I'm done being done with Hubbard. That really seems to make a lot of sense to me. At any rate, it makes sound silly, It makes the evolutionary psychology notion that was going around, I guess, for a while, that there is a subconscious, but we can neither access nor influence it because it's truly subconscious. Seems silly, and yet quite comparable to Hubbard's point of view. His Hubbard's subconscious, quote, end of quote, unconscious, quote, end of quote, is a very different bird from either Freud or Jung. Oh boy, we're eventually we're gonna discuss some Freud and Jung in relationship to Hubbard at some point here in the future. Couldn't tell you exactly when. But yeah, if I have my way. Here, I'll give you a teaser, though. Dianetics is the Aristotelianization of the Platonic residue of Freud, and Scientology is the Aristotelization of the Platonic residue of Jung. Is that enough of a teaser for you? Just as a thought. Or perhaps the closest one could come to a synthesis between Aristotle and Plato, who, despite the opinion of some Muslims and maybe a few others, are, quite different in important ways. Not quite sure. It's a thought I'm just now coming to think about. This is fresh off the stove. It might be a little hot. But yeah, I'm back in the saddle again. I will be talking about Hubbard. I've got a lot of things to say or think about or something. I guess there's really nothing else to say. I might watch this and come to a different conclusion, but that's my opinion at this point. I've said what I got to say. Said all I could say, and I can't say no more. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.